Welcome to the Damn Strong podcast. I'm your host, Bree, and I'm a full-time online fitness coach, and my passion is to educate women on all things fitness. I help women just like you step into the power of knowledge and commitment to ultimately live your best and strongest life. In this podcast, we'll talk about being damn strong in our body, mind, and life. I'll be teaching you how to navigate nutrition, strength training, and mindset challenges. So get ready to take some notes because we're building a damn strong life. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Bree, and this is the Damn Strong podcast. And today we have a wonderful guest who is actually coming on here for the second time. Sadly, we lost the first episode. We recorded together. Not only did we record together, but after the episode, we talked for like 30 extra minutes. We had a wonderful, just little venting session, and then ended it. And I went to go edit it later. And it was like, yeah, there's no video available, and lost the whole thing. So I was like, hey, let's just give it like a couple months and then we'll come back on and rediscuss things. So I'm a big believer, and I think you are too, like everything happens for a reason. Maybe there's something we're going to say today, or like there's a topic we didn't cover that like, that's what someone needs to hear. So we're back for the second time. So why don't you go ahead, Melissa, introduce yourself to everyone, kind of tell everyone what you do.
Hi. Okay. Well, that was such a great introduction. So right there is why we had to re-record and tell the whole story. I'm Melissa Gardner. I'm known as Get Fit with Melissa on Instagram. Me and my husband actually have our own podcast too. And me and Bree, gosh, we got to be friends. What's it been, like 3 years now?
Yeah.
Through Instagram.
Yeah.
Through a reel because of some comments. We'll get into that later, but that's just kind of like how we briefly met. But I'm a personal trainer. I'm an online coach. I like to work. I wouldn't say I niche down to just moms, but I do work with moms because I am a mom of two. And so I have really worked on making my platform more mom inclusive.
Yeah.
I think as a mom, it can feel super freaking hard to want to get into fitness and to battle the struggles of feeling guilty, of knowing how to time manage, of knowing how to, fit it in, and understanding like the benefits of what feels like a sacrifice, right? Yeah. So that's like my big push as I work with postpartum moms, prenatal. I'm a prenatal trainer too. I can work with them. I'm also a runner. I kind of do it all, I switch my hat very often.
You do.
I love it though. Like it's so much fun to be able to help so many people, but I specifically do love working with moms in general and just women who want to feel empowered, women who really want to, step into a different version of themselves. And kind of like you, I love when it clicks for women to have more freedom in their fitness journey.
Yeah.
Because that's when I'm like, okay, you got this. Like you don't need me because you got this now. You get it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head with like one. I mean, there's so many reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast, but like one of the big things is like you do it all, and you not only do it all, but you're also a mom at the same time, and that has always super inspired me about you. It's just like you're very much, and I always tell us like clients and stuff of like, you're a problem solver. You're like, I need to do X, Y, Z. So how am I make it happen? Not, oh my gosh, I have X, Y, Z, so I can't do it. You're like, yeah, I'm a mom of two, and I also run marathons. I also lift. I also own my own business. I'm also in the process of buying a house and moving. You're like, yeah, I think you truly do understand like things do have to give and take, like, and you understand how that works. But you're also like, all I need to do is sit down, figure it out, and I can make whatever I want to happen. And so for me, and I hate the kind of like no excuses talk because I do think some people use that inappropriately. But for you, it's like, she's a mom of two and she's doing it all. Like you can do it too. And then for people who aren't a mom of two, it's like, what's your excuse? You know what I mean? And so It just really shows that if you really, really want, I want to say want it, but if you really want it, to prioritize it, you can make it happen. It's just going to take some extra effort on your end. And so I think that might be the first. And then I love, you've niched down into moms, which I love that just because you have so much experience with that. And I think that's where the struggle is. So what do you feel like? Well, actually, give me a background. Let's first start with background in your journey. Kind of talk through your fitness journey, wherever you feel like that starts for you up until now currently.
Well, before I go into that, I want to touch on what you just said. One thing that's really always stuck with me is so growing up, I was born to two Mexican parents, and the way they lived was so scarce, and they had very limiting, I call them limiting mindsets. And I remember my mom once saying to me, cuando se quiere, se puede, which means when you want to, you can. And that's when they had migrated over here, and them going through that big trial, I think opened up their eyes that if you want something, you can make it happen. You just have to be willing to push past the fears, right? Fear is what will always keep people caged. It will always keep us in a chokehold, right? And the best way to choke fear and to suffocate it is by action.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of lived my life that way, that if I allow fear to take over, or anytime I feel any type of nervousness or worry, like I'm allowing something that really shouldn't have so much power over me to win, and that I don't like that. And when I don't like something, I kick it out of my life, right? And I try to figure out how to have it exit. But like you said, I think I've just been a problem solver, but I think it all starts with my journey.
Totally.
So when I first started, I got diagnosed. So I was, gosh, I'm trying to think like,
where do I start?
Right. So my fitness journey really started with my husband. So when I started dating my husband, he was a little gymaholic, and I had gone to Planet Fitness a couple of times before him, but it was really like, I just didn't know anything. It was just to say I was going, right?
Yeah.
It was just like, I'll get on the treadmill. I used to plastic wrap my stomach to like shrink it to get it to sweat.
I used to do the sweet sweat stuff. I don't know if you ever use a sweet sweat, but yeah, I've been down that road. So
oh my gosh, so funny the things we tried as we were younger. But my husband came into my life, and he just kind of, told me like, I'm gonna go work out. And I had noticed this was something he was not going to just not do because he had a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go with you. And I honestly hated it. I dreaded every day we would go to the gym, because the gym was so intimidating to me, and it was so hard to do. And really, he liked me, so I didn't feel like I had a real need to change my body.
Yeah.
But also, like, at the same time, I was struggling. So I'd be like, okay, well, why am I struggling with these 10-pound dumbbells? Why am I struggling to run a mile? So then I kind of got frustrated with the whole thing. So I noticed I was actually getting, I don't think I said this on the last podcast, I was getting checked like a health exam at home because I was getting on life insurance. Okay, back then I wanted to like bundle a bunch of insurance stuff.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, bundle life insurance and it'll kill your discount for your card. I was like, okay, cool. Anyway, so I'd noticed my weight had fluctuated really high. And then like 2 days before though, it was so low. And I was like, what's going on with my weight? I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So the guy who was doing my test was like, you should go see your doctor and like ask him about PCOS. You look like you have PCOS, which at the time I was like, what does that even mean?
Wow.
So I went and saw my doctor, and my doctor was like, yeah, let's take your hormones. Let's do this panel and let's see. So I was like, okay. So they took my blood, and then they're like, yep, you have PCOS. Let's just get you on metformin. You should be losing weight, get you on birth control. It was just kind of like, do this, do this, do this. But they didn't really explain to me what PCOS.
No education.
Yeah. No, none at all. It was just like, go do this and you'll lose weight and you'll live a happier, better life. And I was like, okay, like, I don't know what metformin is, but my doctor's putting me on it. So I'm just going to trust blindly because it's a doctor, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the time I was only 8. No, that's a lie. I was 19, but still I was young. And so I feel like I didn't know enough. And so when I went and got on metformin and I got so sick and I started noticing like I just had horrible mood swings, low libido, I was like, what? And I wasn't losing weight. They put me on it and I wasn't losing weight because in my head, I didn't understand weight loss, right? In my head, I was like, well, this medication's going to go in me and it's going to kill these fat cells in my body. And as those fat cells kill, I'll poop them out. Like, this is a legit thought process of my 18-year-old brain. And I was like, and this is how it'll all work out. This is why I'm taking this medication, or else why else would I be taking this medication, right?
Yeah.
So I started getting frustrated when I was feeling so crappy and not losing any weight. And on top of that, they had put me on birth control. And I was like, I don't like how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I was running one day at the gym, and this girl, not even a girl, she was a lady, probably in her 40s at the time. She had killed 7 miles in like 60 minutes. And I looked over and I remember my jaw just dropped because I was struggling with a mile. I was like, this woman is twice my age, killing these miles. Like, how is this even possible? And I remember looking at her. She was so beautiful. And I was like, okay, if she can do that, I can do this. Like, it was just like a play.
Yeah.
I was just kind of sick of my own shit that I was like, oh my gosh, I've just been here saying I'm doing the thing, but I'm really not doing the thing. And so I went on my fitness pal, like many people do, plugged in my information, said that I wanted to lose 2 pounds a week. And my fitness pal was like, 1,200 calories. And
Yeah.
I said, well, let's do it.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I saw her running and I said, not only will I do 1,200 calories, I will run 5 miles a day until I hit my goal, right?
Yeah.
So for 6 months, I hit 1,200 calories a day. I never went off. Like I never went over. You can even ask Ryan. I got so strict on it that I was like 1,200 calories. That was it. And if I was hungry at the end of the night, I was eating some cucumber. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
so toxic. But at the time, I didn't understand, right?
Yeah.
So after I had lost the weight, it was probably in month 6 when I was getting down into the 130s because I had weighed. Gosh, I started at 179. I got into the 130s and I remember just feeling this extreme nausea, like really extreme nausea. I was still running 5 miles a day, still eating 1,200 calories. And I was like, what's going on with me? Then I started seeing like black dots. Wild. And I was just like, oh, it's just because, I need to eat a little bit right now. I need a little bit of sugar. And I just wasn't getting it. I just wasn't getting it. And I was terrified to eat protein. Like my friend would have a protein shake every morning. And I was like, that's going to make you so bulky. Again,
Yeah.
I was so naive. And it's okay. I think the reason why I'm bringing this all up is because, and you probably can relate, you've been there too, right?
Yes.
You're
Yes.
naive and you hear these things and you feel fear, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden someone comes to you and they're like, actually you like need these things and you need more calories. And you're like, they're changing your belief because you worked. You believed this thing and it worked for you.
Yeah.
Because for a minute, I really believed the only way I'd ever lose weight is 1,200 calories. Like I was like, I have to be at 1,200 calories if I want to lose weight.
Yeah.
But it created this horrible, horrible self-image and eating. I wouldn't say I had an eating disorder, but I did have disordered eating.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the way I looked at food I was so intense about it. I just couldn't go to the movie theater and enjoy popcorn because I was always thinking about the butter and the carbs. I couldn't go out to eat pizza. Like there was so much that I feel like I missed out on because of how much I wanted to prove something to myself, that it wasn't until I got pregnant with my son and I gained 60 pounds that I had realized. I was like, oh shit, I have a problem, or I had a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What made you come to that realization through having your son that you had the problem?
I was sitting, he was probably like 2 weeks after I had him, and I just couldn't stop eating. I was like super stressed out because I couldn't get him to stop crying. And I just kept going to eat, to eat, to eat, to eat. And then after I would go in and I would eat and I would eat, I would like restrict. And I was like 2 weeks postpartum and I just wanted to go run some miles. Like that my head was like, let me just go this way and then that way, this way. It was just so extreme all the freaking time that's when I was like, I have an emotional eating problem. Like I'm truly an emotional eater.
Yeah.
And I was like, and 2, my brain cannot rationalize like that I don't need to lose weight right now. Like I just realized in that moment, I'm like, I don't like how I feel. Like I didn't like how I looked, but I really didn't like how I felt. I felt so drained, so exhausted, so guilty, so emotional. Like I just could not get a grip at that time. And it was like a click for me where I told my husband, I'm like, I think I have a problem with eating. And I was like, I don't want to drop back down to 1,200 calories. Like I realize now that I've eaten a lot more and I've gained weight, I'm like, I was so miserable because I felt like I just constantly was, like I said, nauseous, blacking out. Like I'd see black dots and I was like, whoa, it's probably like my blood pressure. And that's when it hit me that I was like, I need to better understand this, because though I understood that 1,200 calories made me lose weight, I didn't understand it was the law of thermodynamics that got me there. It was calories in versus calories out. Right. I didn't understand the umbrella of TDE, right? Like I was like, I didn't understand so much.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And then, so you made that switch of like, okay, I have this problem. I can't be this way. And how was the transition from there? What did that look like?
It was after my 6-week appointment with my doctor. I had been struggling with postpartum anxiety really hard. And I think that's part of the reason why I was eating a lot. And I was really struggling. So I went in and saw my doctor to get cleared to work out. But at the same time, he was like, we should put you on some like anxiety medication. And I wasn't against anxiety medication. I had been medicated so much previously with like my PCOS and stuff that I was like, I don't I don't want to have to go that route, but I had realized in that moment I was in such a bad place that I was like,
Yeah.
I have to at least try it temporarily until I can get my groove into whatever else.
Yeah.
So I will say, like, getting on medication I feel like it helped reset my brain, right?
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't so.
It's made that kickstart. It was that kickstart that you needed. You just need some assistant, someone to pull you up. And that was the medication. And once it pulled you up, you're like, okay. And I'm assuming you may have gone off of it after a little bit. Or
yes. So I was on it for probably 14 days. And after 14 days, I told Ryan, my husband, I was like, I think I'm okay. I think I can come off. Like, I had just, so after I had gone on it, I just told myself, I'm like, what is an ideal exercise routine? Like, what would make me feel really good? And I was like, okay, I still want to stick to running because I did like running. But part of me was like, I want to run for weight loss, but I also like running. So it was just kind of a toss up. So I'm like, how about I do 20 minutes of cardio? So I'll do 2 miles, right? And that's about a 10-minute mile. I knew I could do that. And then I'll just do 3 to 4 workouts, like a lift, right? And so I'm like, that sounds good. And I'll break it up to leg day, push day, pull day. My husband will kind of help me with it too, because back when I was doing my 5 miles a day, I didn't really make time for weights. I just ran 5 miles and then I would leave the gym because it didn't seem useful at the time, right?
Yeah.
So my husband told me, he's like, you should start like lifting weights. I think you'd feel better. And I was like, okay. And he's like, and he even said to me, because that's how bad it was. He was like, it'll help you still burn calories, because I was so calorie focused.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're right. Okay.
But he met you where you were at, which was really smart on him. He met you where you were at and was just like, this is not the best reason, which is so funny. I feel like a lot of us start this way. We start lifting weights or getting healthy for not the right reasons. I feel like a lot of coaches, like, we got into this for really unhealthy reasons. And then through the journey got better. And so for him, he's like, yeah, this isn't the best reason, but this is going to get her to do it. And then over time transform, you know? So anyways, continue. So to point that out.
That it's so wild you say that. And that's why we become coaches, honestly, because we saw what we went through and we're trying to help prevent that as much for other people, or at least get other people out of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, after the 14 days, I finally felt myself again. I felt, it was the biggest thing. My confidence just increased. Like, I was following through. I was getting workouts done. Yeah. And I was like, okay, like, I can do this. I was increasing my confidence. And I was like, I don't need the medication. I felt much calmer. And it was like every day I woke up and I just looked forward to my workout. Like, it was just like, I'm excited to go on this run. I'm excited to do a lift. But let me tell you, when you just have a kid, it's not just that easy, because you think, I'm going to do it during nap time, and then they decide not to nap. And you're like, right. Like, and you try it when they're awake, and all of a sudden they're crying at you because they want you to hold them. And it's just like, wow. So my mentality of what I am now actually came from 2019 when I had Beckham, was because Beckham was a really hard baby, like really, 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 really hard. He didn't sleep through the night. He didn't nap very well. I wouldn't say he was colicky, but kind of like, so colicky means like they're just kind of always upset, like something's always wrong.
Yeah.
Beck was that. So I had realized that like my working out style was not going to look like the typical person. So instead of running on the treadmill, I got him into a stroller and I would run outside. I would run with Ryan. Like, I tell Ryan, like, let's go on a run this morning or tonight. Like, can we just go do something, please? Yeah. And he liked that. That was one thing he enjoyed. And I know some babies aren't stroller babies. And when it started getting colder, he wasn't a stroller baby. So what I would do is I would take my dumbbells upstairs and I would look up a hit and I would say, okay, what is a hit workout that I can do in like 20 minutes or less? And then during my rest periods, go over and love on him, or how can I involve him? Because instead of the way my brain used to work was, and I mean, sometimes I still struggle with it. When things don't go as I expect them to, I want to just say that's not even worth it then.
All or nothing kind of mentality.
With a kid, you have to realize like how you set yourself up will probably never go as expected. Yeah. And so I would say, okay, that's not going to work. What will work? What can I do? What can we get in? And so it was like, sometimes it was only the 2 miles or a mile, but at least I got a mile in. Like, it was something better than nothing. And every time I even did 10 minutes of something, I felt human. Like, it's crazy how much you just don't feel like yourself when you step into motherhood. And this isn't for everyone. Not everyone feels this way. Some people step into motherhood and it's like motherhood was waiting for them.
Right,
like,
right.
They are gleaming in motherhood. That wasn't the case for me. The case for me was motherhood was hard. I was someone and then I had to become someone else. And that was such a hard transition for me mentally. And so I had known though, after, getting off my medicine, I was on sertraline, and so Zoloft technically. I got off Zoloft and I was like, this is it. This is what's going to save me. I just knew. And I'm like, but I
Yeah.
have to figure out how every time things don't go as planned, what I can do instead. So sometimes it'd be like, I would try to work out. Beck would have a really, really hard time. And Ryan would be like, I'd go to Ryan and I'd say, look, I just need you to take him tonight, put him to bed. You put him to bed. I need 10 minutes. Let me just go do
Yeah.
downstairs, 10-minute workout. That's all I need.
Yeah.
And that was enough. It was enough for
Yeah.
me to build my confidence. And I think that's the number one reason why people do or don't do things. I really think it relies around confidence, right? The more you feel confident in yourself and the more you like yourself and the ability to follow through, the more you can become someone that trusts their selves, right? And then
Yeah.
you trust yourself. You can trust yourself with the baby. You can trust yourself as a spouse, as a friend, as, whatever it may be. Just even coaching, when I see my clients build their confidence, that's like key. It's always doing something hard. It's always when
it's always by taking action. Taking action
Yes.
builds the confidence. People think that like you get confident and then you start doing all these fit things. It's like, no, you just try to do the fit things. And then, oh my gosh, then you start to build the confidence. It works the other way around.
Yes, exactly. And I hope, like, can we bite that? Like that,
Right.
That's a great clip right there,
Yeah.
because it's so true. It's literally so true. That's how you build the confidence, right? And the more you can do it, the more you grow. And then all of a sudden you typically tap, like if someone taps out, like this is usually where I give up. It's when at this point of my journey is when it feels too hard, maybe if you're running or lifting and it's like, well, let me not tap out and just see where I go.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you unlock the next door. You unlock the next piece to it because you didn't tap out. You didn't continue the cycle of quitting.
Yeah. No, I like what you said about the biggest reason why people quit is because confidence. And I think part of the confidence part that falls there is confidence in what you're doing is going to work. Because a lot of people or clients, I'm sure you have this too, come to me and they're just like, yeah, I was doing XYZ, but I can never be consistent because I would, track my calories. I do this and I just feel like I was doing all this stuff and I have no idea if it's going to work. And so I feel like I'm wasting my time. And so there's confidence in so many different areas of, well, if you're not confident that what you're doing is going to get you the results that you want, then yeah, of course, why would you be motivated? And obviously we don't rely on motivation, but why would you feel like doing it if you aren't even sure it's going to bring the results for you? Probably part of what your confidence came from was you knew that, like, I'm guessing maybe at this point, but you knew that something over nothing was going to bring some kind of result. And for you at the time, I think it was just like you said, just feeling yourself again. And you were getting that result from it. Yes. You're like, okay, I'm getting out of it what I'm putting into it. And so that built that confidence there as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just had the same conversation with a client where she's been kind of feeling like, she'll tell me like, I don't feel really motivated to track my lunch or to prep my lunch or to prep my dinner. And I was like, well, you probably don't feel a push, right? Like she's pretty happy and content with her body. Like she's made quite a bit of progress.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that's amazing, but you probably aren't feeling this push or this want to change because you're happy and content with where you're at. But then a little piece of you is like, but wouldn't it be nice if we dropped another 10 pounds? Like you don't need to. Yeah. But a little piece of you is like, it could be nice. It's like, an entrepreneur. Wouldn't it be nice if I made an extra, $10,000 this month? You don't need it. You can pay the bills. You can live a life. Great. You can have your dream car with the current money, but wouldn't it be nice? Maybe I'll try it. Right. So I think there has to be some type of like push. And so in my journey, after I found myself and after I found like, okay, this makes me feel so good. There was a moment where I was like, okay, now I want more. Now I want it to be a little bit more physique wise. Now I want a little bit more. Right. I want to look better now. I'm glad I'm feeling better, but now I want to look better. And so, and at the time I was still like a trainer online. And so I was like, well, I felt this really big need to look the part. I won't lie to you, but I also felt the need internally of like, I just want to show myself that I can achieve what I'm after. Right. Mm-hmm. And like you said, when you get told like, this works, like, you will be able to achieve this result, the push is there. It's when it's like, you don't know what's the outcome's going to be.
Why put on all this effort if I don't know the outcome's going to, I know how to get the outcome, but will the outcome end up being worth it at the end for all the work that I have to do?
Exactly. No, that's exactly it. So, I went into like another slump at around Beckham was like 2. I had switched jobs and I liked my physique again. I had lost like probably 35 pounds at this point after having my baby. And I was good with my physique, but I was like, I want different. Like I want more. And something for me is I need to have wins in my life. I've actually recently found this out. If I don't feel like I'm winning at something, I really struggle mentally. So I think that's why I always pursue like races or PRs or something. There's got to be a part of me that feels like it's winning. And that's probably due to my childhood, which we don't have to get into my childhood trauma. But anywho, circling back, that's when I was like, I went in and I did 75 hard with my husband, and it was like it completely transformed my body. But besides that, I honestly went into it thinking I want to do something like 75 hard, but it went back to like that extreme mentality. The reason why I did it was because of the way I was like, I'm gonna get these results, and it did bring me the results. Hello, you're not eating carbs, basically. Well, you are eating carbs, but you're not eating like any type of sugary pastry, which helps like reduces your carb intake anyway. And like the carbs I was having, it came from like grains and great stuff. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I felt pretty good, but then I felt that same wave of I don't know how to have an appropriate relationship with food again. And I was like happy with the results it got me physically and mentally, honestly, because of my confidence, right? So I told my husband, I was like, this really bothers me that I feel like I always have to go back to 75 hard because this is what I do. I'm like, in order to feel like I'm succeeding at something, I'm like, why is that? And I've just kind of like really try to break that down. I'm like, why is it that this program in particular is the program that I feel like I always lean back to? Because I've done it 3 times now. And it's funny, every time I do it, it feels easier. Right? It just feels more natural. Like I don't hate it because the first round, I feel like I went pretty hard. Like I would run a lot more. I was very, very strict on my diet. The second round, I actually did it when I'm pregnant, which by the way, like when I did it when I was pregnant, I walked outside for 45 minutes and then I lifted some weights for 45 minutes. Like it was nothing intense. Like it was very mild, and I wasn't drinking alcohol anyway. I was drinking my gallon of water.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm bringing this up is because I tend to feel like I always want to do extremes. And I couldn't figure out why. I was really struggling to figure out, like, why is this happening to me? Because I'd watch you or I'd watch someone else, and I'm like, their lifestyle looks so much easier and more flexible. Like, why am I the one struggling? And I think it really came from this belief that I couldn't succeed if I wasn't feeling like I was constantly dying over the process, right?
Yeah.
If I really wanted abs, like abs meant more than my relationship with food. And not saying that people with abs don't have good relationships with food, but I personally couldn't. I had a really hard time with it.
Yeah.
So I realized like I don't need these extremes. The realization came from asking myself, like, are you happy right now following these extremes? And would you be happy to continue to follow these as you get older? And not 75 hard, when you think about it, like the program itself is really good. The only thing that can be a problem is when people are doing it because they want the quick weight loss, because they want to follow that, like
they want the extremes
rigidity
out of it. Yeah, totally.
But when you do it for like the mental aspect of it and just to show yourself, that was my thing, is I just needed to show myself I could follow through on a routine and stay structured. I just needed to find something that I enjoyed, that I could stay structured. And then when things needed to pivot, I could.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. So you were talking about that, like, there was this realization of like, am I happy doing these extremes, and would I have to do them long term? And I guess you came to the conclusion of like, no. And is that what made you kind of make that switch, or dive into that for me?
Yeah. I finally felt the need. Honestly, I felt the need to want more freedom.
Yeah.
I felt the need to want to show myself I could have a really good health and fitness like atmosphere, like a good fit body, feel healthy in my body without feeling constantly restricted.
Yeah.
Without feeling like I couldn't go out and have, and with weight loss, we do have to modify, right? Like I can't have a whole crumble cookie when I'm trying to lose weight, because that takes up a majority of my calories in a deficit. But at the same time, I don't deny myself that crumble cookie if I want it. If I want that cookie, I have the fourth of it, and then I have a single serving of it. But it took time to get there. And it was more like an opening of like, okay, well, if I don't want to restrict, and this is actually not something I want to continue to pursue, like, what is the outlying problem? And the outlying problem became, I want to look a certain way, but I don't think I want to give the effort. And I think you might have
Mm.
posted this, like, I wanted A+ results, but I wanted to give C effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I
want to
posted
be
that
asked.
before. Yeah. I posted that before. So
Yeah.
yeah, but so you're saying that's where you decided to change your extreme to balance was when you kind of had that realization.
Yeah, and my balance looked different. I feel like balance is just such as it's so subjective depending on who the individual was. But I felt this need of like I wanted to just instead of looking lean, I wanted to show myself I could be strong. Like
Yeah.
I was like functionality wise, like as a mom, like it didn't make sense for me to always want to be the skinniest version of myself because my kids were growing and I couldn't keep up with them, right? Like my
Yeah.
2-year-old became a 3-year-old and then I got pregnant with my second and it was just like my life, and maybe it's because I was getting older, my life felt like it was fleeting and I didn't feel like I was actually doing things for it to help increase the longevity of it. Like my
Yeah.
mindset was not in a place where I was like, would I be happy teaching this to my son? No. And
Mm.
so I wanted to find out what my life could look like outside of extreme restrictions like programs and 1200 calorie diets and diets in general. Like, I just wanted to be like, okay, what if I just stick to my deficit and I allow myself to have treats and I do this for 6 weeks? Like, what will happen? Like, let's just try it out. I go to the gym and I focus on lifting heavier till failure. What will happen then? And
Yeah.
I just gave myself a timeline. I gave myself a deadline and I said, just do this for 6 weeks and see how you feel.
Yeah.
And I felt wonderful. I
Yeah.
felt great. I finally was like, oh, so this is how I'm supposed to feel. I'm supposed to feel human. I'm supposed to feel this freedom of it. And now don't get me wrong, like a cut and like weight loss, no matter what, like extremes, whatever, it's always gonna feel hard,
Yeah.
but you don't have to be miserable during it.
I agree. I agree.
You
So what would
know?
you think? What would you say then is, I'll ask you two parts. What do you think is your biggest struggle, like going through your fitness journey, your biggest struggle when you tag it on to like being a mom and your fitness journey, and then what you find your clients who are moms and their fitness journey? It may be same thing. It could be something separate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I honestly think the biggest thing for moms is time management. Like
Yeah.
I think so many moms struggle figuring out time management, and that kind of goes along the hand in hand with like the support system and like communication
Yeah.
of like communicating I need this need and I need this. And so I think a lot of moms, and maybe I'll just speak of myself for now, with time management, you have to ask and you have to figure out like, okay, could someone watch them? Do I trust someone to watch them? What's the daycare rates? Like you have to do a little bit more work. And I think for some moms, they're already feeling so overwhelmed. So the thought of like having to put in an extra 5 to 10 minutes to call and say, hey, what's your daycare rates like? I think a
Yeah.
lot of them perceive that as a very big task. And I know that by experience. Like whenever I have to call insurance to figure something out, I'm like,
Yeah.
I I dread it, right? And then
Right.
on top of that, to say, okay, well, where is your time going? I think that's also really hard for a lot of moms and me in particular, because when I had sat down with myself and I said, okay, where is the majority of my time going? A majority of it was going to scrolling. A majority of it was going
Mm.
to sitting around. A majority of it was going to things that were so unproductive that I was like, is this how I want to continue to utilize my time? Because I'd always say, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And then I realized like I had plenty of time. I just wasn't using it to my advantage. But also, the scrolling was like I was getting some type of like dopamine hit from it, right? Like I felt like this feels good because I'm getting a break. But my break could be on the treadmill walking while scrolling. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah, true. So how did you, so you said you sat down and you were honest with yourself about your time. Did you pull out a calendar and literally write drive to here, here for an hour, drive home? Like, did you timeline literally everything out, or how did you come to that conclusion?
Yes. So it was when I was working 40 hours a week I had a very intense job like 2 years back, and I worked with I worked at the special education part of this district that I'm near, and my job was really really intense. And so I was like always feeling drained. And so for someone who learned to love working out, I was actually learning to dread it. And I was like, well, something's got to
Mm.
go with my schedule. So as someone who worked 40 hours a week, who was building her online business. He was online, I just realized like I felt like my life was in 20 million places and I was a mom. So I was like, okay, Google Calendar. I sat down and I literally just dumped it. I actually heard a podcast. I want to say, gosh, who was it? Someone had said it. They're like, you think you don't have time? Try sitting down and writing everything out. It might have been Ed Milet. And I was like, that's a good idea. Like, maybe that's what I'll try to do because I was feeling, again, suffocated. I think moms go through waves and people in general, we go through waves where we feel suffocated and stressed out. And it's like, well, is there something we can actually do? Like, is this as big of a deal as we're making it? So I sat down and I pulled up Google Calendar and I, like you just said, I said, pick up Beckham this time, drive to work this time, get to work this time, go to lunch this time, like check-in this time. And I looked at my calendar and I was like, okay, so there is a lot here, but there's also 45 minutes here, 45 minutes there, an hour here, an hour there, 3 times a week. I can make something work. Get to bed by this time so I can wake up at this time. I can make it work. And then I was like, okay, we're going to make it work. And so I told my husband, I think it's very important to tell someone your plan. So it's not just you holding you accountable, because I think a lot of us struggle with that.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, here's my plan. I'm going to work out at these times on these days. And he was like, okay. And so whenever I didn't work out, he'd be like, hey, what's the new plan? Like, he wasn't rude about it by any means. He'd just be like, hey, what's the new plan? Because he saw I didn't work out. And I'd be like, oh, shoot, I should probably work out, at this time. Because now that I went through my schedule, I had a kind of an idea of like, oh, these are available times I have. So this is when I'm going to go. Right.
Yeah.
And I hate to say, like, it's kind of like a doctor's appointment. Like, you have to make time to go to the doctor's appointment. You have to make time to go to the dentist, to go do these things. And most of the times we don't cancel on those things. So I treated my workouts as something I didn't want to really cancel on. Sure, they could get rescheduled and here and there they got canceled. But most of the time I made it on time. I was there. I was showing up.
Yeah. Do you do the same thing with your clients? Because like you say, you're saying a lot of or I don't know, you said you're speaking for yourself, but I'm assuming you're also like your mom clients also struggle with that. Do you do the same thing? You're like, hey, here's your homework for today. You're sitting down and you're writing out your whole week and time. Is that what you do for them? Or do you approach it a little bit differently for them?
Yeah. So it depends on like their lifestyle, but for the most part, yeah, I ask all of them the ones that come to me and they feel a little bit more chaotic. Cause there's some moms that come to me and they know their schedule and they know their time and they got that part figured out. But then I have a couple of moms where they're like, well, I just don't know. Cause like, my son gets out of school at this time. And I'm like, okay, let's sit down. And let's be realistic with our schedule. Maybe you can't work out 5 times a week. Can we work out 2? Can we work out 3? Like, let's be realistic with this. And where can we actually put in a 30-minute, even a spin? Like, you want to go do your Peloton for 30 minutes? Go do your Peloton. Just where can we add this? Yeah. And then if we can get this schedule down, then we can add to it if we wanted to at a later date. But first, let's figure out actual time slots. Let's figure out actual, time that we have to be able to do this. And then another struggle I feel like my moms have is limiting beliefs. And by that, I mean, a lot of moms come to me kind of the same way as me. And they're like, well, I did Weight Watchers growing up. I have a lot of clients who are over 30 and they're like, well, I did Weight Watchers. And I feel like that's the only thing that works for me. And I'm like, okay, but like, who said that? Like, who has said that that's the only thing that works for you? And they're like, well, that's how I feel. And I go, I love how you feel, but your feelings aren't reality. And that sucks. And not that they're not valid, but they're not reality. Right. Yeah. And so I'm like, I need you to trust that what we're going to do is going to be better than Weight Watchers and that you don't need Weight Watchers to lose weight. And honestly, they need that quick win to buy in. And so a quick win I do for them is I'm always like, look, you're doing it. You did your workout this first day. Good job. Like, I try to be really on top of them the first couple of weeks so they can feel that like support. And then after they have the first win, they're like, okay, this is going to work. Right. And not every week or month will be perfect, but it is something that I feel like really, really helps them. Yeah. I get a lot of other moms who are like, I'll never be a good lifter. I'll never be able to lift as much as you. I'll never be able to run. And it really always comes back to, I just say, who said that? Yeah. And they're like, it hits them that they're like, shit. Like, it's just me
I'm just making it up.
Saying these things in my mind.
Yeah.
Right. But the beauty of that is like, you can also reverse the role. Like, if you're the one saying those negative things, you can also be the one saying the positive.
Yeah. Well, it's a good point. If you're saying, you're asking, well, who said that? It's like, well, I said it. It's like, okay, well, if you're the one that said that you'll never be a good lifter, why can't we switch that and tell yourself I'll be the greatest lifter ever? And sure, maybe it is a little delulu, like you're not going to be the greatest lifter ever, but it's also delulu that you're never going to be a good lifter, because that's just untrue as well. So it's like, why not, if we're going to say things that aren't true at the moment, why don't we pick the positive one versus the negative one?
Right, right. That's exactly it. And as someone, so I have a behavior background. So I've worked with, I've worked on modifying behaviors for 7 years. And I actually utilize a lot of that in coaching where I'm like, okay, here's the behavior chain, right? You get home and you get out of your car and you go to your pantry and you binge these chips, and then you go upstairs and you feel bad because you binge the chips and you don't know how much to track. So you track a serving of it. And now all of a sudden you're up 2 pounds, but wait, you tracked the chips, but did you track the right amount? It's a behavior chain, right? And I'm like, okay, so what can we do before the behavior happens, right? And they're like, oh, well, I get out of my car. And I'm like, how about you go to your room instead of your pantry? And then they're like, okay. And then they text me and they're like, the weirdest thing, I went to my room, like you said, and I didn't even think about the chips later on the day. And then I was like, oh my God, I didn't have my chips today. And I'm like, we have to break up that behavior chain. So I think a lot of people with the mentality of thinking positively, I think it's because of the way they grew up. I think most of the time people grow up second guessing themselves. I think people grow up questioning themselves, especially people who struggle, I think, internally with weight stuff. They're like, oh, I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think I can do it. There's a lot of trauma around it where like a mom said, you shouldn't eat that, or you need to go work out. You need to do Weight Watchers. And it sucks because I'm sure those parents at the time didn't mean to instill limiting beliefs, but they did, right? Yeah. And then so we're over here just trying to undo all of this and be like, hey, it's okay. You're safe. Like, let's work through this. So with my moms especially, I tell them, I'm like, it's really important that we do the hard work now. So then when your kids get older, you're not replicating what happened to you to them. You can have a better relationship with the scale, with food, with tracking. And so when they come to you, you feel armed and ready to be like, yes, this is how we stay healthy. This is how we are healthy, right? Instead of being like, you need to finish that plate. I spent a lot of money on that. That's what my dad would always say.
Yeah.
You need to finish that plate. Spent a lot of money on it. And so whenever I didn't finish the plate, I felt so guilty because I was wasting his money, right? That was like my limiting belief. So when I was an adult, I was probably like 24, I was eating and I was like, I don't have to finish this. Like, I'm full. I don't have to finish this. And it was like the weirdest click moment for me where I was like, oh my gosh, like my dad used to say, you don't finish this, like you're wasting money. But like, who said that? Like he did, but I don't have to continue to believe that, right?
Yeah, totally. I had this revelation on the last podcast I was talking is I feel like, and this goes back to kind of when you're talking about behavior change and stuff like that is, as kids, and I'm not getting into like, if this is bad parenting or good parenting or whatever, but most parents correct behavior of their children through punishment. That's taking the phone away or taking the TV away, or you have to go sit in the corner, or you don't get this, so you lose privileges. And so it's natural for us when we don't have the behavior of ourselves that we want, we punish. You ate the piece of cake when you weren't supposed to, you need to go run a mile. You're not following through with stuff. Well, I just need to be more extreme. And so I was like, oh my gosh, and I realized that it's just kind of, and again, I'm sure there's times where like the phone needs to be taken away or the kid needs to be grounded or whatever. I'm not saying those are bad tactics, but I think maybe our parents' generation specifically, there wasn't a lot of like positive reinforcement that was used to help encourage the good behavior or try to change the behavior. And so it's kind of foreign to us that it's like, oh, you're trying to work out 4 times a week. You only worked out 3 times. So instead of punishing yourself for not doing 4, you're getting positive reinforcement for like, you did 3, you previously never worked out. You did 3 workouts. That's amazing. And then going on that high. So I don't know if you have any, from the perspective of mom stuff, have any perspective on that in particular?
No, that's something I literally tell my clients all the time. It's funny you say that. I actually had a client where I told her, I said, hey, if your son came to you and was like, Mom, I got 3 out of 4 answers correct, would you be like, oh, you suck? Yeah. Oh, you did a horrible job.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. You would not do that to your child. So why are you doing it to yourself? You got 3 days in out of 4. Like, you still got 3 days in out of 4. Why would you like tell yourself you suck? And they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, the same love you give to your babies, you have to give to yourself. Like, you have to. And you're absolutely right. in our age, so it's called ABA, what I used to do. It's applied behavior analysis. It actually is recently new, and it's all based off positive reinforcement to create new behavior change in human behavior. And so when I see a mom or someone who is struggling, I can tell that the number one tactic that was used, and me too, was either positive punishment, or negative reinforcement. So we added something, we took away something, or we just like stopped in general.
Positive punishment would be like, you have to do burpees because you did this, because it's positive you're adding, but it's a punishment because it's meant to punish. Okay. I've never heard that before. Positive
right. And then
punishment. So
yes. Yeah. And so I learned this all in school. And did you go to, I can't remember. Did you go to college?
Yeah, I did. I did biology though. Yeah, I did a minor psychology.
I learned it in behavior, but I also learned, so I'm a psych major. And so we learned it in psych too. And that would always confuse me because whenever I'd hear like negative reinforcement, I'm like, well, what does that mean? And it's always just like the takeaway ad, like typing to increase the likelihood of a behavior.
Right.
And so a lot of parents, that's how things worked for them. And so as they grow though, like you said, it's something natural that's what they just naturally do is, okay, well, I ate 2 slices of pizza, so I'm taking away this tomorrow, or I'm adding in the miles or the burpees, right? Like it's such a way of its environment. It's how we were nature versus nurture. It's how we grew. And it's really hard to recognize that and say, this is something I need to work through. But that's the positive thing as a mom that I like to tell them is like, we're never too old to reframe and modify our behaviors and our thought process. Even my mother, she's 60. She's like 58. She's pretty old. She's older.
Pretty old. You need to apologize to everyone who's listening to this podcast that's 58. You just called them pretty old.
This is my mom. You're not old. This is my mother. Okay. Anyway, she's very traditional in her thinking. Her thinking is very like, don't eat carbs, don't eat sugars if you want to lose weight. She's very traditional in thinking. And we were out on our trip and she said to me, how do you eat the way you do and look the way you do? And I said, well, what do you mean by that? She goes, you just ate that whole, I had a sweet cream rolled taco ice cream thing.
Yeah.
She goes, you just ate that whole thing. And I was like, yeah. She goes, aren't you scared you're going to get fat? And I said, no, mom, because this isn't my everyday. This isn't my consistent. I'm on vacation and I wanted to have this with you guys. So I had it. And I was like, would you tell Ryan he can't have his whole thing? Well, no, he's a man. And I said, he can still get fat. He can still gain weight. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I guess that's true. And I said, 90% of my life is not eating ice cream. I don't normally eat ice cream, right? It's not my like every day. Just because I personally, I have a harder time with stuff like that in my home. And so when I get access to it, I like to have the access and not have guilt around it.
Yeah.
So I told her, I'm like, my normal life just isn't this much. So when I get access to it, I'm going to have it, not feel guilt over it. And she just it just clicked to her. And I said, it's not what you're doing inconsistently that's going to create the problems. It's the consistent thing that could create the problems or create the solution, right?
Yeah.
And it clicked for her. It really did. We came back home and she just told me, like, I really like that you said that to me because I feel like I've been so scared to eat anything. And so when I do eat it, then I tell myself, well, if I already had the Coke, she's a little Coke addict. She loves Coca-Cola.
I know. I was going to say, I love it. You quickly clarified that. Yeah, we got you.
Coca-Cola, okay? She's like, whenever I have my Coke, I'm always like, well, if I already had that, I might as well, have this. And that's the normal, typical way of thinking, right? Well, if I already messed up, might as well mess it all up. Yeah. And I told her, I was like, hey, like, you don't have to do that. And so she said to me, she's like, I had my Coke and I still had like a protein dense lunch and I didn't feel like I had to go off the rails. Yeah. And my mother, who was older, for her to say that, it just really showed me, I was like, we're always free to change. We're always free to change. And honestly, as mothers, like, we need to be able to have that healthy relationship of change to be able to model that for our children. And I know she'll tell me all the time, I wish I had a healthy relationship like you do when you were growing up. And I'm like, well, you did it and that's okay. And I'm learning and unlearning things, right? Yeah. But I think the first thing that comes to my mind is, as a mom, you have to just take that accountability and say, there's a problem here. And I no longer want to be hand in hand with this problem. I want to find a solution. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I want to feel better. Yeah. And I need to recognize it's going to take work, but it's work I'm willing to put in.
Yeah. Yeah, you had mentioned that I don't know why this just clicked from the last time we filmed, but you mentioned one of the things that moms really struggle with is like asking for help. And was
Oh yeah.
that, yeah, I think I was like one of our last things. I was like, what's something that I don't know if it's, you asked something people struggle with, or you're like, what's one thing you want moms to kind of just know? And you were just like, ask for help because that's going to be a biggest game changer. Was that something you struggle with too? Or you just like in general, you find that moms struggle with that as well?
Oh gosh, I struggle with it so bad, Brie. I think so. Have you ever taken like your tendency? Like, do you know what tendency you are?
No, I've never even heard of tendency.
Okay, so there's a thing called the four tendencies,
Okay.
and I've learned a lot about myself. So I'm an upholder tendency, and an upholder technically, what we like to do is we have this moral obligation to ourselves and outside of ourselves. And we like to say, I got this. I don't need anyone to hold me accountable. I can do this. I don't need anyone to help me. I can figure it out. So that's my
Mm.
tendency. I'm an Enneagram 8. And Enneagram rates are very rigid. We're very hard headed. We're very like, it will get done. So now that I know those things about myself, I'm like, okay, so something we tend to struggle with is asking for help because you feel like you feel guilty for needing to ask for that help. Like you feel like you should be able to take it all on.
Yeah.
And so because I know that about myself, I've worked on asking for help. But I think it's like it's a personality conflict with me where I'm like,
Yeah.
why am I asking for help? But yes, I think moms really, really struggle asking for help. I actually think I might have said that was number one on the last podcast, but it goes hand in hand. Time management, asking for help, and saying, "Hey,
That
can
perfectly
you
goes
take?"
hand in hand because
Yeah,
part of time management as a mom would be whether it's from your partner or if it's from a friend or parents if they live by, that is
yes,
probably a massive part of it.
and not only with fitness, but just like in life in general. Like, hey, I need help with, can you take the kids, or can you help me with this project, or can you help me figure this problem out? Because I think as women, honestly, we tend to be like, we need to be able to figure it all out, and that's just so such a hard expectation to put on ourselves that
Yeah.
we have to figure it all out alone. Where it's funny too, though, we're always the first people to be like, let me go help my spouse figure this
Yeah.
out. Let me go help my son figure this out. But for us, I don't know why, to be honest, why we internalize and we're like, oh, like this is something I need to figure out on my own. And maybe that's just me speaking of my own experience, but there's actually, I have clients where I'm like, why did you think you had to figure that out by yourself? And they're like, I just didn't want to bug you. I just didn't
Yeah.
want to bother him. And I'm like, you're not a bother though. Like you're
Yeah.
welcome to ask for help. So finding help within your community, within your family, having conversations even beforehand and being like, look, this is something I want to do. I want to get healthier for my kids. Is it okay if Mondays and Fridays you take them for 30 minutes so I can go on an outdoor walk? So I can go to the gym, finding out if your gym has a daycare facility, what is the rating on that? Because as a mom, you're always thinking of safety too.
Yeah.
At least I am. And so I always like to look at things and be like, what is the rating of this gym or the daycare of the gym? Do I feel safe with my kid here? What do other people say? Right. Um, and then getting help that way. Like you said, I just typically, when there's a problem for me, I'm always like, there's a way to solve it.
Yeah.
I just have to clear my head to figure it out. So sometimes I go on a walk when I'm trying to solve a problem because I feel like being inside in my home where the problem occurred or is occurring, I feel like it bogs my mind and I
Mhm.
can't think clearly. Sometimes I take a nap and then I
Yeah.
can have a
Yeah.
better like headspace and I'm like, okay, because a lot of us we roll on emotions and feelings. So in the moment, something can feel so big and so hard and so difficult because it maybe turns on your fight or flight response and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
But if you can just take a second to step back and say there's going to be a solution to this, you will find that solution.
Yeah.
I also believe in like the law of attraction so hard, like wholeheartedly, where I'm like, what you like lean into is what you breathe life into. So if you're always leaning into struggle, you're just going to get more struggle, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's so hard for people to be like, no, you're guilt shaming me, like you're gaslighting it. I'm like, no, I'm not trying to. I'm just saying, like, if your brain is constantly in that place, maybe let's figure out ways that we can get out of it, right? Let's figure out a
Yeah.
way that we can step away from here because feeling guilty and shameful and exhausted and tired and struggling, like, gosh, that's no way to live. You only get this life one time. There's
Yeah.
no way to live that way. And there's no way your kids want you to live that way. And there's no way your spouse wants you to live that way. So, like, I always think like there has to be a way to not feel that way 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of it too, when it comes to, you're talking about the planning and all of that stuff too, is taking the time to do it. And I feel like a lot of people say like, I don't have the time. And it's like, this is what I always will tell clients. I'm like, whether you plan it ahead of time or you do it in the moment, it takes the exact same amount of time. So if you pre-track your day, that takes, let's say 10 minutes. And then if you are just doing it in the moment as you're going, that's going to take up 10 minutes to track it over the course of the whole day. But it actually ended up maybe taking more time because you're having to fumble through because you were going to eat this, but crap, I'm not going to hit my protein. So I have to do something else. And all of a sudden you don't have that. And then it just ends up actually taking more time too. So I think also coming to the realization of, taking the time to plan things out, taking the time to see where things are going to fit is also super important, because being proactive like that will actually give you more time if you end up planning at the end of the day,
100%. And just knowing that you can become that person, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people fight that and they're like, well, I've never done that. And you're just like,
I'm not a
but
planner.
you can.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not a planner. They put this personality on them. I'm
Yeah.
not a lifter. I'm not a planner. I'm not a runner. And it's like, but you don't have to stay that way. You can change. And I feel like that's my biggest like empowering moment is like, I'm someone who's like, if you would have met me back in Brie, you would have hated me back in 2016 when I was preaching my 1,200 calorie diet and stuff.
Yeah.
But I've changed so immensely that it's like changes that we're able to do it.
Yeah.
We just have to be willing and wanting to. Cause like you said, yes, pre-tracking might take a minute in the morning, but you're scrolling on your phone anyway. Why don't we just switch over to my fitness pal? And then now plan your day. You're going to hit your protein goal. You want to scroll on Instagram for the rest of the 30 minutes? You can. You took care of the one thing that took you 10 minutes. I have ADD diagnosed, and I got diagnosed because I was having a hard time, you're going to laugh, of showering. Like I shower, but like for some reason it took me so long and it felt so hard to shower. And then I noticed other things becoming extremely difficult for me. And I'm like, what's going on with my brain? And for people who have ADD, we see a task and we break it down into little things, or we're like, well, I have to undress and then I have to prep my hair and then I have to do this and I have to do this. And so we see all these steps that all of a sudden, like a shower, right? But in someone else's brain, it's like a shower. And that's an ADD brain, but I also think it's a mom brain, which I think most moms have ADD because of our children. Anyway, circling back. So all of a sudden, like, this big old thing becomes this big task, and we're like, I don't want to do it because this task feels so daunting. So for me, I have to tell myself, I'm like, well, do I want to climb the ladder now, or do I want to suffer with the consequences later? Because you're going to have one or the other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's so good. Yeah.
Right.
It has to get done anyways. So do you want to do it later when you're going to hate yourself more about it because you put it off, or just get it done now? Like there's no option out of it. So do it now or do it later, which is going to suck less, kind of thing.
Exactly. And like the person you become in the future is based off the actions you're taking right now.
Yeah.
And so if you want to become someone who gets over these humps or gets over like these little mental trials, I call them, you have to start working on them now. So that when bigger, harder things come as you grow in age, as we will get through, right? People, as we grow in age, we have houses, kids are getting older, like things happen, why not set yourself up now and put the college fund, start it now, right? In your health, start funding it and investing in it now.
Yeah. Because I think at the end of it, what people don't realize is if you're not, caring about your health now, you'll be forced to care about it later. And that's always been like a thing that I really like to see on Instagram. I'm just like, yeah, you're right. Like if you don't want to eat, I'm not fit. I don't like running. I don't like eating vegetables. It's like, that's fine. Just know, like, if that's what you're not going to focus on now and trying to be healthy now, you will be forced to focus on it later at some point. And so I just think people don't see that. They just see themselves as like, well, I don't want to do that stuff. And then they just get to ride out life, not worrying about it. And it's like, well, you'll have to, unfortunately, have to worry about it in other ways.
Right. It's that gratification. It's like delayed gratification. No one wants to go through it. Everyone wants the cookie at the moment. They want the resting at the moment. And I get it, because as I'm sure you can relate to, like instant gratification is so nice. Like, give it to me now. Amazon, you ruined us. Give it to us now. But that's something I've had to learn, that like people say, how do I create discipline as a mom or as a woman? And I'm like, it's by being okay with not getting it when you want it. Craziest thing, quick side story. I learned that people who actually can control impulse control and like delay gratification, end up having like a less likelihood of cancer, a less likelihood of going into debt, a less
Wow.
likelihood of going into drugs. Yeah, I'll have to send you the article. I was reading this article Ryan had sent me, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. They had followed these individuals that had been practicing, like one group was practicing delayed gratification, the other group was not. They were doing more impulsive. Like you
Yeah.
wanted to buy the chair, they bought it. The
Right.
other people were waiting, right? And it was really cool to like be able to see, like they pulled up like the graphs, and the people were more likely to do these things. Anyway, sorry. I just thought about that because of how much we say, I need it now. I want it
Yeah.
now. But it's like, but you have to understand, in order to get there now, you got to put in the reps. You
Yeah.
have to build up the strength to be able to lift that 600-pound bar. Because if
Yeah.
not, if you don't practice, if you don't strengthen it, delayed gratification, if you don't create that strength within it, then when you get to that 600-pound bar, you lift it off, it's going to crush you, right?
Yeah.
We think,
Yeah.
I want to be 50 pounds less now. Okay, we'll start putting in the reps now. So then when you get to that 50-pound weight loss mark, you know how to sustain it, right? Like
Yeah.
all goals that we want start with somewhere, and progress is progress no matter what, how small, right? Like the nail in the
Yeah.
foundation and the framing of a house, all the nails matter. Like
Yeah.
call it what it is, 2 or 3 nails missing, you could end up messing up with the frame, right? Like
Yeah.
little things matter.
Yeah.
And
I
I
love
think that's
that.
something I really want moms to listen to, is the little things matter. So even if you're like, I can't work out, even if you're like, I can't prep, what is a little thing you could do? Could you get more water in? Could you get your steps in? I know it sounds stupid. I know it sounds small, but it does matter. And as you start building that confidence, like we talked about in the beginning, that's when you can slowly start to see, okay, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to follow through, and then you do.
Yeah. No, I love that. Do you want to, I was going to say, I was going to kind of wrap it up here since we're kind of hitting time. Is there anything else you want to say, like leave with moms, or you do want to, I think that was perfect. If you should want to leave moms with that.
I just think like, yeah, that, and like believing in yourself and believing that you're worth
Yeah.
the shot, that you're worth every all the ways you believe in your children and you believe in your loved ones is the same way you need to believe in yourself,
Yeah.
especially if you want different. You
Yeah.
are 100% deserving and worth it. The same love you give to them, you need to give to yourself, and watch yourself become such an even better mom, such a better wife, such a better
Yes.
person, because you did that for yourself. Like I'm speaking of experience, and I'm not saying it'll be perfect, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying you won't struggle and you won't have bad days and bad image days. You will, it's inevitable, but they'll become less and you'll be able to handle them better.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, cool. Why don't you let everyone know where they can follow? Well, I guess you kind of told at the beginning, but just a reminder, let everyone know where they can find you. Let them know your offers, what your Strong Mom Club, one-on-one coaching, all of that. And then we'll kind of wrap things up.
So you can find me on Instagram at Get Fit with Melissa, all together. And right now, so Strong Mom Club is a club I offer to moms exclusively. I wanted to create a community to bring moms together, to help, I think a big thing with moms is connection. And so that's what I really wanted to build. So the new enrollment, I believe, starts April 16th. And so if you go on my page, I always post about it on my stories. So there is payment plans available. There's like a one-time purchase available. You go in it for 8 weeks, comes with workouts, macros. I do meal guides, not meal plans. So I give you like ideas for eating, what you could be eating, when reality is you can eat anything, but people really like them. I also have I'm on Playbook, which is the link in my bio, and so that's just like a subscription app that you can do workouts for if you don't really want to do more of that one-to-one. And as far as one-to-one, I'm actually not accepting clients at the moment. I have a wait list, but if you want to apply, you can go on my bio and apply there. I love working with moms. I really love working with postpartum moms. I do prenatal, so I can do pregnancies. And really any type of woman I'm happy to train. I have a couple of girls who I train that are marathoners. I have half marathoners. I love training people for races. So yeah,
She does it all, you guys. She not only does it all herself, but she trains it all too. And then wait, where can people find you for your podcast? Are you on all the platforms?
Yeah, it's just on Apple. It's the Tell It To Me Straight podcast. And hopefully we have a new episode coming out maybe next week, Maybe in May,
It's
though,
been on a
because
little bit of a hiatus, but she's
it has
busy. She's
been.
got lots of things going on, and I get it.
But
So
you can binge some of our episodes, and
true.
our episodes are good. So if you want to
Cool.
binge them, which you know what, Brie, maybe I'll have you on my podcast as soon as I move into my new
I would love
house. We
that.
can
I would love
have you back.
that. That'd be
So
amazing.
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. I just want to add one thing. If you were listening to this episode like super in the future and it's not April 16th or 18th, like you said, for Strong Moms Club, I'm assuming people could go to your page, DM you, figure out when the next enrollment period is if they're interested in that. So if you're currently listening, this will be up, I mean, before that enrollment period. But if you're listening in the future, I'm assuming just DM you. Is that the best
Yes,
option?
100%. DM me, watch my stories. I also do challenges. I'm just finishing up one of our challenges. It's called the Glow Up Challenge, but I love my challenges. I love them because they're a challenge more to just bring you into your day one. So my company's called Day One Athletic because I like to help people start their day one. And that's what my challenges are catered to. My challenges are 6 weeks. So you'll always find that on my stories, or yes, like Brie said, be happy to DM me. And if I don't DM you back, send me a follow-up message because sometimes messages go into the hidden folder.
Yeah.
But yes, always message me.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the episode. And as always, guys, if you are listening and you want a free way to support the show, just screenshot, share to your stories, tag both me and Melissa, and I will catch you guys on the next episode. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Damn Strong Podcast. Show me some love by leaving a review and sharing a screenshot of this episode on your Instagram stories. Until next time, stay strong.